After this very enlightening speech by Dr. Belisario, we continue with, in fact, a bit of an overall panel, a broader panel on AI, specifically on AI in education and between promises and limits. I'll try to keep the session short, and I give directly the floor to Roberto Ricci about the positive, let's say, the pros of AI.
Thank you very much. Thank you for this super interesting speech that you delivered to us. I think there's a lot of things to reflect on. And during your speech, I related with the roundtable that we had the first day about the technology, the impact of the technology on education. And again, I had the feeling that we should have a positive approach. I mean, I think it's useless to continue to speak about only, not the dangers, the limitations, the risks. We should take a more positive approach, because technologies has ever changed our lives, and we should take into consideration this is maybe the big issue is the speed how artificial intelligence can impact on education. And again, during your speech, I was reflecting on another speech that I heard more or less at the beginning of this year from a former Minister of Education of Portugal, speaking about the changes that they did in their national guidelines in our language, and he said that the key issue is to find space of time in order to implement innovation and changes in our education. And I see in artificial intelligence big opportunities in order to find these spaces. And again, if I to reflect on our typical activities as a teachers. I'm not a teacher, but you know, for instance, in UK, as far as I know, there's a big debate where the government is suggesting the use of artificial intelligence in order to mark homework or write judgments of students, if I may translate it this way. I'm not at all surprised, and I don't think it's so a bad thing, because going back 30 years ago, when I had a short experience as a teacher, and more or less when we wrote a kind of description of our students, we had in mind more or less 4 or 5 types of students, and we tried to apply more or less adapting what we had to each student, changing. But it is not a scandal, because except some exception that they require specific kind of description, more or less with 4 or 5 draft of description, I was able to write this kind of judgments before the Matura. And I see a good example of good use of the artificial intelligence, because that was not at all important job that I did as a teacher. So, of course, we should command the impacts, also the possible potential drawbacks, but I see a lot of possibility in terms to save time and use it in a more effective way, maybe to help students. When I say help students, I mean support students with difficulties, but also talented students in order to reach other goals as well. So I see for the educational field, the most interesting part is to have time to do more intelligent things and to exert in a certain way our educational profession. because we have a lot of things that are not that, in a sense, related with our human being essentiality, if I may express myself in this way. And again, I have the feeling, starting from myself, that I'm considering only very tiny space of action by using artificial intelligence. And so I think we should, of course, by considering all the constraints and risks, to be a bit more optimistic and open and use it in order to explore new fields. For me, the most promising part is the possibility to explore new fields. So if we play in a so defensive role way, as I heard for so several questions and remarks, I guess we lose the opportunity to gain possibilities and profit on the big potentialities of this technology. So my idea is more or less to reproduce again with a speediness that before was unthinkable, but more or less the change that we experienced in the last centuries in educational field. And maybe could be also the opportunity to implement in education research and new approaches that are not so common in our field. So I think the disruptive potentialities of artificial intelligence in education could be at the same time a good tool to force our not in a good sense, conservative approach in education. And of course, we need educational framework and not, I don't know the word in English, but not to look too much to our omphalos, but a bit more to look to the landscape. And this I think could be an opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Roberto. I would then pass the floor to Patrizia Falzetti.
Just to say, because we use artificial intelligence, but we need to be careful to what is around the artificial intelligence. So we know the artificial intelligence is inspired by the model of human mind, but we ask, is real intelligent? Intelligence is something more complex, which implies self-awareness and those qualities that currently constitute the limits of artificial intelligence. That do not allow to this technology to reach the depth of human thought. So not. And the artificial intelligence is infallible? No, absolutely no. Also because more complex is the technology, more variable can affect the performance of this kind of technology. So we have to take in account a lot of more things in the model of artificial intelligence. The artificial intelligence does not take into account a lot of external factors unless are part of the process. So if you are study a context, you can take into account that specific things, but you cannot take you cannot control everything. For example, the economic efficiency of the solution, the lawfulness, and also I don't know, the equity it's a very big problem about artificial intelligence, or the possible realization in the physical world due to the issue, technical issue, administrative issue, regulatory issue, and so on. So we have a lot of limits. I'm not taking time of this, and also ethical limits and dilemmas. I want to focus on a study that UNESCO made this year. The source is the Challenging Systematic Prejudice of Artificial Intelligence. Is a report of this that they published this year, and the first recommendation in this report was that the AI actors should make a reasonable effort to minimize and avoid reinforcing or perpetuating discriminatory and biased application and outcomes through the life cycle of the IA system. So, to ensure the fairness of this system. The gender bias is it's my theory. It's not the only bias, but the gender bias exists, and you know. I'm focused on this thing. Yes. The gender bias is a pervasive problem worldwide. And there are a lot of studies on this report, very interesting. And it's not just only the gender bias, but I'll show you also the differences between the South and the North, and also the ethnicity of people related also to the gender. And this bias, it's present, and we have to take into account when we use artificial intelligence, because we are research, we are a community of researchers, but normal people using artificial intelligence doesn't have the instrument to understand what is behind the artificial intelligence. So we have the duty to aware all the president does not agree with me in all my passion of gender differences, but we have to take in charge this problem, and I'll show you what is behind the artificial system. This kind of technology are trained with dataset, but this dataset learn and perpetuate the biases present in the training materials. So it's like a mirror of what is the reality, what is our world, the world in which we are living now. They can reproduce the problems that we have. And how could advance the aim of gender equality and equity worldwide if, for instance, it harnesses ethically and inclusively. So can be change something if we take into account that we are facing something that it's not so fair. I go on. Okay. This is the first study in this report. They made the association between gender and career. This is very typical, and so a female was associated with home, family, children, and marriage, the male with business, executive, salary, and career. If we train our algorithm with the data that exists, this is the results. So we need to also discuss and decide which is the data set, the information that we use to train our algorithms. and also another study who studied the different the generated text in different cultural and gender contexts. British men are defined like driver, caregiver, bank clerk and teacher. British women, prostitute, model and waitress. And we are in the United Kingdom. There is also the same study, they studied the words for Zulu men and Zulu women. Zulu men, gardener, security guard, teacher. Zulu women, domestic servant, cook and housekeeper. And also, when we speak about diversity and stereotyping in the large language models, they made this study about boys, girls, women and men, and they asked to Lamatsu chart to create stories of about 1,000 stories for each category. And we have this cloud. Word cloud, as you can see, men, we have men, day, time, life, town, and women, we have husband, mother, the first word for women, and for boy, we have town, small, beach, adventure, decide, and for girl, woman, child. The second word is child, gentle, garden, magic. So we have a demonstration that something is not working as we expect. And this is expanded the analysis to north and south divide. And this is the global south, woman, girl. As you can see in the south, women, rights, doctor, education, girls, and in the man and boy in the global south, background, dignity, soccer, appropriate, sisters. In the north, we have both fishing, castle, woods, rabbits, and for women, wildflowers, handsome, baking, bakery. So, the increased complexity of artificial intelligence necessitates more rigorous efforts to achieve equity in the AI driven decision and interaction. And so we just have to invest our efforts to do this model more human being, more capable to detect if there is something that is discriminating, that is not equity, and so on. Because otherwise we can risk to use the artificial intelligence. This is very powerful technology in a wrong way to perpetrate differences and discrimination.
Thank you, Patrizia. And thanks God that artificial intelligence is a she. Then I leave the word to Maria Renata Viganò to try to strike a balance between, well, positive and potential biases.
Thank you very much. No, first of all, let me thank really Ernesto Belisario for many reasons. Well, the first one is having accepted the invitation to come here. The main reason is that when I learned to be involved in this roundtable, that was 10 years ago, more or less, I started to read a huge amount of literature about artificial intelligence because, and so I thank you, because that was an extraordinary opportunity for me to approach question of artificial intelligence and to realize how much I'm serious at this point for a researcher, but studies education. It's really a central topic to face with. The second reason is really for the enlightening speech you did, because and it was not easy on Saturday at midday, so double thanks, because it has really been involving in. Well, my first reaction was looking at your slides and to your speech. Oh my God, that's true. Oh my God, but that's related to what happens in classrooms. Oh my God, but that concerns me as a teacher, and so on. So, and the third reason to thank you is that exactly at the end of the speech, while you were answering to the Grazia, credo, last question, you put the ball in our field. Because the answer was about consciousness or something like that. We have to teach to people. That means that here we are. That's an education question. How to teach, how to help people. And when we speak about school, when we say people, we are speaking about students, teachers, school leaders, but also parents, but also the whole society. And in other words, he has given us a very important asset, I don't know if the words are, let's say, help, to realize that it's our problem. It's not the problem of someone else that have magically, as a kind of magic, to solve the problem of being able to use correctly AI and not to be conquered by AI. So I see, and I only say 2 words about what I consider for me points that researchers and teachers and all those who are involved in education should think about and should have in their head. The first point is that, and we are starting to speak about that, AI literacy is or is AI critical literacy or is not literacy. I'd like to read you a definition of AI literacy, which is not mine. It's a colleague that was here yesterday, Maria Ranieri, that started working on this topic many years ago, because according to me, gives out the right definition of AI literacy. The heart of AI literacy lies in the ability to navigate, understand, and critically interact within the complex AI ecosystem, which consists of a vast network of influences and interactions that intertwine technology, society, and the individual. Students must not only understand how an algorithm works, but also how these algorithms, once implemented, can shape behaviors, influence decisions, and even defy cultural norms. That means that when we think about what can school do about AI literacy, we have to have in our mind at least 4 dimensions. The cognitive dimension, we have to know what AI is. The operational dimension, we have to know how to use. The critical dimension, we have to be able to evaluate, to read between the lines somehow. And we have, and the fourth is the ethical dimension. We have to be able to understand what kind of consequences that arrives until the Chinese example or algorithm that autonomously decide if, for example, hiring or firing your workers, because this happens. So this is the first point. The second point is is the use of AI as a pedagogical ally. It's an extraordinary that has been said several times in these days. It's a good policeman. It's an exceptional, it's an extraordinary tool for teachers and students. That's no more worth to repeat that. But at the same time, there are some, if we look at the use of AI in school, there are some, say, tensions that have to be considered carefully. Say, for example, automation versus autonomy. AI is something that I've never had before for automation. So we can correct homework easily. We can project our intervention, we can prepare our slides in a way that we never had the possibility before. But at the same time, the educational relationship in school is made also of trust. It made also of the ability to take decisions, to take risks. And this, we cannot delegate this. Because this conquer that comes, takes time. And it needs a place to be implemented. It needs the relationship with people. So this is just an example, but to say that it's an exceptional ally, but we have, and Roberto said this at the beginning, only if there's a larger pedagogical view and intentions to drive this use. The third point is about, and this is quite scary for me, having seen also that I have studied this, I've read a lot, about the question of emotional intelligence in the use of affective. What is called affective computing. We have seen computers are able, artificial intelligence is able to read, to understand our emotions, understand our reactions, and this is exceptional too. Because, the example is I'm a car driver, I can save my life because I've a machine that tells me, well, you're tired, gives me a signal saying, well, stop, it's time to rest, don't drive so fast, and so on, and the same for many other applications. But we have learned a lot of things before, but there are how many children and teenagers that spend their day, many hours a day, scrolling social network. We know that when you use Facebook, and Facebook is prehistorical now, we magically then found advertisements about exactly that topic and so on. Do imagine children with TikTok, with things like that. So this is something that, from my point of view, for a teacher, for an educator, for an expert in education, have to be very carefully attention. The last point is, but school can do something. School can make the difference. Because I try to say this in 2 sentences. Knowledge, and I use the terms knowledge with a large meaning, so comprehension and so on, have 2 main directions. In math, many things, the more I know, the more I'm able to do many things. but also them. Artificial intelligence is winner in there, in where? Because the quantity of information it, she or her, I don't know, is able to process, to summarize, we could never compete with it. So this is not the question. We have to learn to use it for this. But artificial intelligence summarizes, not create, generates on the basis of things input. But it's not able to reason, to read between the lines, to go in depth, to use critical thinking. And I think that the difference that school can make is exactly going on much more than school has done up to now, developing critical thinking. And in these days, we have seen a lot of speeches or examples using INVALSI data as a resource for a didactic that helps to develop critical thinking and not only to repeat sentences or things that we have read. So I'm happy about artificial intelligence, and I think that we can be happy and we can have a better life with it, helping our students to become adults, not controlled by, but living better with artificial intelligence. Thank you.
Thank you, Renata. And before opening a very quick space for the public for questions, I leave the word to Professor Marco Lazzari from the University of Bergamo.
Thank you. Shortly, I thank you for your sparkling speech. I scribbled several notes on several pages, but just a couple of notes. I have to say that before joining this round table, I was as scared as Renata was, but I often am the odd one out and I suffer from the impostor syndrome. But then I understood that I am the right man in the right place because I was born and grew up in Cremona, which is the town of the newspaper where the 18 over 23 students used the AI for their homeworks. So thank you for that example. Well, I have also to say that I'm supposed to be a professor of teaching and learning, coordinator of a PhD program on human sciences, former director of a department on human sciences. But I feel well, my 92-year-old mother has made so many sacrifices to get me graduate in computer science in Pisa. And whenever I phone, yesterday I phoned her and I told her I'm in Rome and I know that she thinks that I'm here to install some software. But then I changed my life. But starting from 1982 and for about 20 years, artificial intelligence occupied my life, before as a student, then as a software designer. But now I'm supposed to be a professor of teaching and learning, and I strongly feel, well, I wish to connect to something that Renata said, and to your to what you said about risk, and well, you skipped the slide about the definition of risk, but it was too short to be the same that I use. So I tend to highlight that risk comes from an interaction from between the level of danger and the probability of harm and the severity of harm, and the actions of a person, of a user. And therefore, I think that it depends strictly by the literacy of that user, as somewhat said Renata. So I think that a very important priority that we have as educators is to foster, to promote this digital literacy. And another short topic about China and the Chinese children, and I was really scared, as you said, because well, I teach my students that psychologists teach us that we need to alternate moments of selected attention and diffused attention. That we really need that something that they don't want, because they don't want children get distracted. And psychology teaches us that the importance of the dolce far niente time. I don't say, well, dolce far niente is a term that is an English term, a Russian term, is used everywhere. I don't tell my students dolce far niente time. I say cazzeggio time. and perhaps cazzeggio could be something like zucchini or spaghetti on casseggio in English. But I think that this is important, alternating these moments. So I think that we should think, what do we regard as important in education? Not to get distracted or learning. Which are our aims? Which is our, where do we want to go with our students? I forgot an important thing when I said that I grew up in Cremona, and that is one of my first jobs, a summer job when I was 17 in the 70s, has been substituting very few years later in the 80s by a robot. And this is one of the problems of artificial intelligence. But I do something better now. And this could be something that gives us some hope in the future.
I know that we're standing between you and lunch, therefore I guess one round of questions. No, there is a question. No, there is someone.
Spaghetti time after cazzeggio time.
Thank you so much for this section. That was very illuminating. So there is something I'm worried about, and I really see the role of like regulation, the role of like our fear, for example, of discrimination using algorithm. But then I'm worried about missing out opportunity in innovation. And I can give you an example. So I'm coming from the US, I've been teaching for a while in the US, now I'm coming to Italy. We had like a bunch of software that were super useful in teaching. So for example, I could map my student, get all the information of who was not talking in class, gender gaps of who was not talking in class, in order to make sure I was like careful on my own biases. And now like I came here, I was like, I want to use the same technology that I used to have in my class. And they were like, oh, GDPR, and like a bunch of like AI problems, and we can't do that. Even like in a very like good university that, and so essentially there was like a bunch of like a super high cost in taking the same simple software that I was using to check on my own biases and try to prevent gender bias in my class and like bias by socioeconomic status that I can't use anymore. And so now I wonder like whether like all this fear is actually bringing us behind in terms of innovation, and actually is bringing like our human biases to still keep perpetuating stereotypes in the classroom instead of helping us solving those stereotypes, while like AI could really do that, and we are losing out on opportunities because of like fears or like regulation aspect. So this was like a little bit like a provoking thought that a challenge that I faced, like being used to the two environment, and I really see like a lot of opportunities, but like sort of like we really needed to overcome those fears and like see and embrace a little bit more innovation in using AI. So this is like a broader, more comment. I know that I'm behind between you and lunch, but like I thought it was like very interesting, like to share the different experience across the two different contexts.
Thank you very much. Second question, and then replies from whoever.
Hi, Paolo, from INVALSI Research, INVALSI researcher. Well, ancients spent a lot of time, lots of efforts, try to understand what distinguish human beings from objects, plants, animals, and so on. Maybe now one of the challenges is to try to understand also what distinguish human beings from AI, not only from a very important point of view of legal, but also in order to realize limits and so on. But in my opinion, this could be also a risk, and the counterpart could be that in the future maybe somebody or someone will try to close this gap.
Thank you very much. So I open to our speakers. Anybody wants to comment?
If I may, what Michela said, for me is related with, I'm sorry, related to your accident. And again, it's a way to take a more statistical perspective. So, of course, we should take into consideration the problems, but we are, if we are too conservative, giving up to big opportunities. And from my perspective, if an automated car has less probability to have an accident, is better than a car driven by a human that is, of course, could be not so impressive if there is an accident, but in general, from a general perspective, the number of people with the injuries, accident is smaller. This is the answer for me. This is the answer for me. And again, of course, maybe not measuring the emotions, but in order to know a lot of things. And again, we didn't have the opportunity to speak about the possibility to use this data in order to prevent the problems. We know that very well because we had also a litigation in front of the authority, and again in the debate 2 days ago came up again the lovely label of fragile, and but again I think this is the risk that we should take into consideration. And of course, there are a lot of things that we should take. We should discuss about the comparison with the Chinese, the future, the possibility to have time to, a possibility to have money and resources in order to spend time to reflect on things and so on. So I think it's very, very important. And the very last things. I was wondering the level of skills that we need in order to do discussions like this that we are doing now. So again, the rule of schools could be very, very important, because do you imagine the difficulty to do a discussion like this with a general public today? I think it's close to impossible. Thank you.
Thank you, and I guess that Roberto's words are a good way of closing our session. Thank you to all the participants.